Oh, hello, everyone. Joanne Williams here, and we will be doing today's podcast for Anxiety Simplified and YouTube channel Anxiety Simplified podcast. Today's subject is on post traumatic stress disorder, or most people hear it as PTSD. And we're going to talk about what causes post traumatic stress disorder, signs, symptoms, and treatment options. And there are many. So, no, there's some things you absolutely can do. So, this is a summary of today's podcast on the signs and symptoms of post traumatic stress disorder that we're going to start with definitions. How pervasive is post traumatic stress disorder in Americans, and a discussion of its effects, examples of events that you choose if you think this is the definition. And actually, my story, my life story, and how I came out with post traumatic stress disorder and a new type of traumatic stress that because of the pandemic and effective treatment options. And our next podcast will be on simplified techniques for coping with social anxiety for the holidays. So let's get started. And we're going to start with a definition of PTSD. But a core issues really are kind of that summary are the cornerstones are anxiety and depression and lack of trust of yourself, of others, victim thinking, and avoidance, which to me is one of the real issues why people do not get help or treatment if the actual one of the symptoms is avoidance. So, how and why are you going to get treatment for it? And, it kind of feels like or seems like trouble follows you or bad things follow you, or, you have that kind of stamp of victim on your head that people are just drawn to you that make things happen. And it can be really sad because they don't understand, why am I victimized over and over again? And I'm going to tell you why. But here is my story. And it seems so benign and easy to even deny its effects. And you might hear some of your story in this. So I'm going to be vulnerable here. I don't know that I've ever shared this before. But I was born and lived in the 60s with a father coming home, putting his feet up in the chair, having a drink, pipe, read the newspaper, with that newspaper in front of his head with four kids that he's ignoring who are desperate for his attention. And my father became an alcoholic. And my mother was overwhelmed, four children, and kind of invisible. And I had a brother with attention deficit disorder, or it's known as ADHD, which you may know or hear about. But really, it was without any kinds of control on his behaviors and no one to stop him and no one to really protect the other three kids from him. I was younger and I had a younger brother. And so I think we got the brunt of it. But my first memory was of a big clodhopper saddle Oxford, they were called, this tri-colored big old fat shoe flying across the room and hitting me square in the face. And I was just this 3-year-old little petite thing, and my brother had thrown the shoe across the room. There I was, right in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I woke up seeing stars and with a big black eye. Kind of wonder what would happen today going to school with a kid with a big black eye. Little kid. But that was the kind of chaos that ensued around our unhealthy household with an alcoholic father and an invisible, uncaring mother. I remember just trying to survive it and feeling totally helpless with a brother who twice I felt like attempted to kill me by trying to smother me with a pillow and drowning me in a pool, all in the name of fun. And I can remember that victim thinking starting when I was very young. I'll never get out of this alive. What am I supposed to do? I'm just a little girl. I'm going to die if I don't figure something out. So I did start looking around for options, even if there was like continual, I felt church abuse happening as we had to go twice on Sundays. But to hear this preacher just pounding on a pulpit, yelling at me that I'm a sinner. And I'm like, I'm just a little kid. But then we got home from Sunday school and there was physical abuse. Seemed like every Sunday, or certainly emotional abuse, was yelling because we were with the belt. I don't know if everybody remembers the belt and my father snapping it. And if we weren't good enough or quiet enough in church, and my brother couldn't be, he couldn't sit still. But I knew I had to find some ways, things even within myself, so that I really look for connections within myself or in nature and even in universal laws. Even as a child, looking at different churches, religions, other ways, but still ended up following my parents' example of unhealthy pathways. Since, your mind and mine are wired by the time you're 18 years old, or 95% of it is wired to the same beliefs as your parents, religions, or social beliefs. It's just the way it is. But then a friend found a counselor, and I was almost 30, I guess. So I went. And it was one of the lowest points in my entire life when I just said, enough is enough. I knew I needed help to get out of this life. Now, with an alcoholic fisherman husband in Maine, and desperate to live a healthier life, to be able to look at things differently with choices and a way to live a healthier life with two beautiful children and not be a victim anymore to anyone or to their lifestyle, and to live in a lifestyle that's more about what I wanted, not about I had no choices or way out. That counselor saved my life. That was the moment when I chose to become a counselor and went back and got my graduate degree. Wasn't easy with two teenagers, a recent new marriage, and I've done this now for 30 years and loved it. With trauma as my specialty to help other people, like my counselor helped me to see my victims' thinking and to be able to build trust again with myself and with others. But I had to do my own internal work to change this thinking and change my lifestyle so that now I can actually offer you things that I couldn't have offered you 30 years ago. But I do offer now a Fear to Fearless course and counseling that's available to you now as a way out. But right now, I want you to hear the symptoms that really create this victim thinking so you don't get trapped in them. Or you don't even know about, so that you can become aware. So you can make different choices once you are aware and know that there is help for this. And I'm going to go through the clinical symptoms from our DSM manual to diagnose any kind of disorder, but post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. There's actually 5 sections, and I'm going to go over kind of quickly, but listen to these to see if you hear some of these for yourself. And if so, treatment is critical. Not so you really don't keep making the same unhealthy thought habits because they're in your subconscious now. You're not aware of them because they are going on. And these thought habits just continue to cement this victim's lifestyle. So these things do continue to happen to you because you don't even know what to do or never even knew that maybe you even had these symptoms. And you must have some of the first criteria, the very first criteria. I'm not even going to count it in the 5, but because if you don't, this is not post-traumatic stress disorder, because sometimes I really do hear from clients, oh, I have PTSD because of whatever. I was bullied in school, or sometimes even the opposite. I was sexually abused, but it was never penetration. So it can't be abuse, right? Or PTSD symptoms. Not true to either one of these examples. But this is the first one that you do need to have to be able to first even move further in to see if you do have the symptoms to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, that you actually were exposed directly to a trauma that was life-threatening or serious bodily, emotional injury or sexual violence, or now it is witnessing it as well, or continually witnessing such things that maybe police or first responders might have. And for more than 1 month, the client has been experiencing re-experiencing of this event. Here are the four other sections that once if you do feel like you have experienced life-threatening, serious bodily harm or sexual violence, or witnessed it on a continually basis, and you've had these things continue, you do need to have at least one in a few of these, at least one in every section. Some of you have to have two, and I'll name that. But the presence of intrusive symptoms associated with the trauma, like distressing memories, dreams, flashbacks, psychological distress, or physiological response to this internal, external cues that resemble it. Number 2, avoidance. And it has to have one or the other, the avoidance of the distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings associated, or avoidance of people, places, and things that remind you of this trauma or associated with this trauma. Number 3, you need 2 of these or more for any of these. They call them negative alterations in cognitions, which is kind of a fancy name, or mood associated with the trauma, inability to remember things about the trauma, kind of that denial of it, negative thoughts about yourself. I'm never going to add up to anything because of this. I'll never, whatever. Or the world, the way you look at the world, it's untrusting. You can't trust. It's not okay. And persistent, distorted beliefs about the trauma. Oh, this wasn't that bad. Or it, it only happened for a short time. Sorry. Marked diminished interest in doing things, or feeling detached or estranged from others because you don't trust them. Persistent inability to express positive emotions, the joys of life, happiness. You just can't go there. Number 4, you have to have at least 2 of these. More reactive or arousal associated from the trauma that is evidenced by an irritable mood, reckless, destructive behaviors, fights, drunk driving, I don't care. Hypervigilance, looking around, looking over your shoulder, never sitting with your back to the door. Exaggerated startle response. Somebody slams the door, you jump. Problems with concentration and sleep. And you can also have disassociative symptoms of feeling detached from reality, or feeling the world is kind of unreal around you. Really funky feelings. You may not really even know why they're happening, but this can be triggered in an event outside of what happened, and you may start to feel these feelings, and you know that you are now becoming triggered and having this PTSD response. And it really becomes like a mental and physical anguish that you can suffer, which you can be traced right back to this event. And while post-traumatic stress disorder does affect both adults and children, the percentage among war veterans is significantly higher. While PTSD is found at a rate of about 9 to 10% of our general population, it shoots up to 30% among deployed or previously or even non-deployed now veterans. PTSD symptoms can be psychological and behavioral or physical. A person may go through their trauma repeatedly in nightmares and thoughts, night terrors, they call them, or they may completely avoid situations that trigger them, crowds, social situations, people, places, or things that remind them of the trauma, or stay constantly over vigilant, having the gun by the door, protect yourself, protect yourself. Such symptoms can really lead to sleep deprivation and sudden loss of temper because you're just not getting good sleep. And needless to say, the condition of PTSD has a negative impact on the quality of your personal relationships, with lack of trust in others and worst in yourself, and in performance at work with inability to concentrate, socialize because of the frustration, agitation, or anger, irritable all the time. I just can't feel right in my skin. And these can be unintentionally triggered and then targeted towards their partners, families, coworkers, situations that would otherwise be non-consequential that become bigger issues. It can lead to spats at work and even escalation to domestic violence, fights, especially when drinking and not really caring, wanting to get into it. The key is to really identify some of these symptoms early to get help and create a system of support for yourself. Excuse me. I have found I really have become a specialist, or when I started out counseling, I became my specialty. And from my 30 years as a mental health professional, I really learned, more about it and ways to manage it. And that's what I would say to you. To learn to manage it, there is no cure, because I consider this a brain injury from that trauma where you did think you were going to die. Your brain has been wired differently now to protect you. Sorry, to protect you from everything. And so that's where the anxiety can come out, that I better not do this. I better not do that. What if this? What if that? And there's like this never ending loop of anxiety that goes on, paranoia to not do anything, because if you do, the possibility is really high that something might happen. And that's all your lower brain, your emotional brain has to offer you. Protect, protect, protect. Don't do this. What if? But the good news is you can rewire this. You can do something about it. But it's using the upper part, the conscious part of your brain now, and not let the lower emotional brain take over and only give you the signals of anxiety that can even go into depression because it's just too much. But what you have to do, and part of what I'll talk about a little bit later in the treatments, is use your upper part of your brain to go, okay, let me check out the environment. Let me use the logic right now in my environment. I'm very aware. You got really, really good intuition because of this. Use it. How do I feel right now? It's actually not that bad. I'm looking around. I have my mace. I'm ready to be whatever right now. I've locked the door. Go through your steps. I'm okay. Then move through it, and you have to keep moving to get through fear. Unfortunately, right now, because of the COVID pandemic, we may even see a new type of traumatic stress called secondary trauma stress. When the stress is overwhelming the coping mechanisms, leaving people feeling out of control and helpless because of continual exposure to trauma with healthcare workers, mental health workers, or caregivers becoming depleted, exhausted, or worse, with self destructive behaviors. We are already seeing increase in depression rates and suicide rates increasingly in caregivers or doctors, mental health workers, because they're so overwhelmed. They're not able to cope. And with many of them of the same symptoms of that we just described with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. And only 40% of these clients actually seek treatment because of avoidance. Fear. This is treatable. You will learn to manage the symptoms. Skills. You can learn skills. The best treatments are cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. Dialectal, like dialect you speak to. But both CBT and DBT, you can find apps and download them to teach you these skills in the moment to work with these symptoms. Again, this is treatable. The DBT has three components. And one of the reasons why it has become one of the most effective and the highest success rate, because it has a workbook with it. Literally a workbook. I have this symptom. Go to this page. Do these choose from this list to do this thing in the moment. That works and helps. You literally can open it up in the moment on the app, or there is a hardcover, and deal with the issue or emotion. Or if you do have the freeze up part of the fight, flight, or freeze in post-traumatic stress disorder response, you can go into the bathroom, open up your app, look at it. What do I need to do right now? There's also a mindfulness component to DBT to learn how to let go, allow, and not get so attached and agitated by situations and people. One of the examples I remember, it's like allowing things to just flow off you like water off a Teflon pan. It's just not so attached in the moment. Let it go. It also includes CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, or looking at your thoughts in the moment that are having you suffer, whatever is going on right then and there that's making the situation worse or you feel worse. And you can stop and think, what am I thinking right now that's getting me this agitation, this anger, whatever it is? Because the thought you can change to change the emotional response or behavior. So you can stop, think, become aware, breathe. Give yourself a little self timeout. If it's just breathe 4 times, count to 5 to make a new choice in the moment so you do not make the situation worse. And this puts the treatment in your control, which is a key component that I have found for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. It has to be within your control. When you choose the treatment, who you do the treatment with, when you do, what you do, how you do. Because this avoidance piece of post-traumatic stress disorder and lack of trust are huge issues. And you must feel you can choose your treatment when, where, and how. But please choose it and choose to learn to trust yourself most of all. Then you can judge the situation and yourself and make a plan that will help you cope better, relate to your loved ones better. You can feel happier and more at peace. Please reach out if you need to. You can actually find an 800 number on the back of your insurance card for the mental health providers that your insurance will help pay for. Even through your work, you can look in the HR manual or online for the EAP, Employees Assistance Program, for 6 free sessions. Or ask a friend who helped them with these issues. Many veterans organizations or agencies have specific groups and training to build skills to feel better. So it's not just reminiscing and talking about what happened, literally building skills. I certify clients who have an emotional support animal or ESA, and I have found that having an ESA is one of the simplest, most helpful ways when you can have your dog, can be other animals, with you in more places, or to go to a family outing or gathering. If you can have your doggy friend with you by your side. You can find out more at our website for emotional support animals, ESAs, at esapros.com. And I'll have that in the show notes. Or you can also reach us for a podcast website at anxietysimplified.net for other resources and even how to get an emotional support animal. So you really can learn to trust again. You can do this. We're here to help. There's people out there trained to help. So please don't be one of the only 40% to reach out. You need help. There is help. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Please support our podcast by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. Please, to show your support. And remember to use and practice a skill we shared today to feel the joys of life. Remember, you can always call us 760-485-6784 for that free 10-minute consultation where we can discuss your next step. Or you can go to our website at anxietysimplified.net for more on how to get certified for an emotional support animal today. And remember to share the love.